Guys, so nice to meet you. It's great to see you see you here and have a chance to talk. I will go through with Paolo, my colleague, for a brief presentation. But before, let's introduce us. I'm a concept artist. I'm also, together with Paolo, one of the founders of the Academy. I personally work as a character designer for a variety of studios, including Tencent, so Riot Games, Lightspeed currently, and Wizard of the Coast was on Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering as concept artist and illustrator, and also occasionally as a creature designer. And together with Paolo, we manage a school in Rome, which is an international visual development school called the Academy. So what we're going to do today is go through what we think it's the most important information about AI in training, how it changes the landscape, and how we can adapt to it, what we do in school, and what we personally believe works. So we would like to go through this brief presentation that I was mentioning, and then leave as much time as possible to ask any question, okay? Because I think that's the most interesting part to do. We can talk about work, we can talk about AI and work, we can talk about anything that comes to mind that is bothering you, that is worrying you about the future. So I hope that sounds cool for you. Nice. Okay. So if you're okay, let's share screen, entire screen. Cool. And let's present. You see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, as the title says, why concept art training must stay human? It's all about that. We've introduced me and Paolo. It is very important we go through these slides and we use it as a reference to talk about things. So what's important to understand for us in IDEA is how humans learn in our experience. And I would say, and we can discuss that, it would be great to discuss that with you, how we challenge the widespread notion, at least in some areas of the world now, that AI is actually a tool that helps you creatively. Let's start with this. We are not against technology in any shape or form. Me and Paul, especially, we're always on the lookout for new things coming up, to understand how they work, to study them, to integrate them where they work. But when it comes to AI and training, we did find quite a few compelling arguments on what it does to training and how to avoid some of the pitfalls that come with AI. And in IDEA, to say this as well, we don't use any form of generative AI or any AI application to help out in the work. It's not because we don't want to teach that. It's because we don't think it's the important side of learning. So, and that comes from the basic assumption that we have, is that there is a fundamental difference between how the human brain works and learns and how AI works. And please, if you have questions, start writing them down, because I think there'll be many coming up, and I especially like challenging questions. So anything that comes to mind that you think can spark a conversation, type it down so we have it for later. So AI, it's, first of all, AI doesn't exist. Artificial intelligence has yet to be invented. What we're dealing with is large language models. Even agentic AI, it's just a marketing tool that is being used to sell a product. So what we have here, it's a mathematical model, a large language model that is based on a lot of data. And it is a descendant of a very rigid mathematical worldview. What we're talking here, it's a prediction model. This is what an LLM is. While we strongly believe that the brain and the way we experience feeling is absolutely unpredictable, the kind of feelings we get and what we can input into art. So that's the main difference. One of the reasons why we believe AI in training is, I would say, a negative factor is because it usually leads to cognitive atrophy, which means that by relying on a tool that is at least initially looks particularly powerful in giving you a very complete answer, it can be an image that is already very well painted, or solving a visual problem, it does lead to you using your ability to create much less. And that's one of the biggest problems that we are confronted with when we use AI. This is a very old painting. We know now what we did with AI. We now have much better works being made with the technology. But this is just an example of what we think it's all about using AI, which is a mashup of things that it doesn't understand where they come from. So this means that doing an image for us as artists, as concept artists, is not about putting stuff together however it comes, like AI does, even when it does beautiful painting. It's about creating a storytelling in the image. So what we are trying to see is how AI actually creates a ghost image of where you want to go that doesn't necessarily help you to get there, because it does, reduce your ability to think independently, and it gives an answer that's so defined that it actually blocks you and chains you in a pattern that is not good for a creative person. AI only works with data. This means that it has to do, it has an archive. It has an archive of things that have already been made, being it images or text. And that means that whatever it can produce is bound by the limits of what's already been done. Of course, we know that we do, in some ways, especially as artists, a similar thing, right? We look for references, we gather them, we try to look in the past, and we try to mesh up what we see. The thing is that we understand context, and we attach and transmit feelings to what we do so that other people can interact and feel the same things that we are experiencing through our art. AI or LLMs, they don't do that, of course. In some way, we can say that AI acts a bit like a wall, like a firewall in your learning process. And it gives an answer, but usually the fastest and the cheapest answer available. While a human needs to go through things, experience them themselves, and by that experience of things, create something new. And we are going to create something new because the way we subjectively experience life is something that is constantly innovative. So there is a factor that we have to put in an image and in the storytelling. As I was saying, AI doesn't observe life, and it's basically a probability tool that puts pixels together based on the closest estimation of the problem that you beat them. It doesn't understand volume, doesn't understand shadow, it doesn't understand anything at all, actually. AI doesn't have any actual idea of, even in text, of how letters fall, what they do mean, what's the root of a word, and why. It just gets information on a probability matrix to get as close as possible to what you need. And it looks like mimics intelligence, but there is no trace of intelligence whatsoever. I encourage anyone to question this. If you have resources to show that there is an intelligent AI out there, I would be glad to talk about that. So this means that whenever it proposes an image, a face, or a hand, it doesn't actually understand what a face or a hand is. There is no idea about that, okay? And this leads to one of the biggest traps of working with AI, which is not only getting stuck into the first answer that it gives, but getting stuck into the average of the answer that it gives. AI is the sum of everything that is being fed to it. And what it produces is always the safest option to give you something as close as possible to what you need, which is very, very, very rarely, I would say never actually, innovative. Innovation is built on archives of images, texts, and other people's work, but it's also based on how you deal with it, you personally. So it is a trap, because in some way you get stuck into it, and in other ways, what you get stuck into is the average answer. Even if it looks very well painted, but we already said that a good image is not the purpose of being a concept artist, it's storytelling. So you get stuck into that, you get stuck into the average answer, and it puts you in the middle. And this means that there is a divide, right? Where using an LLM and trusting it will never lead you to being an innovator, and will put you in this mean zone, in this median zone that is very, very, very hard to live. So the risks: cognitive atrophy, which is, of course, our, let's say, fading ability to think critically and create novelty, because we are using a tool that does a lot of that work by itself. And then the importing errors. Many things that the AI produces need to be vetted, and it's another complex process that is actually very frustrating, both in art and in other disciplines that are trying to apply AI to the pipeline. And it's a very, very shaky foundation to build on. So one of the crucial aspects for us when it comes to learning is to try and really, really exercise our cognitive muscles. And this means understanding the entire process from scratch, from the start to finish. The only way we can do that is by having control of all the process. If we put a tool like this in the pipeline, we lose control of how we get to the answer. That's why it is very important. And sometimes, especially, you know, if you do art, we have to go back and forth our ideas constantly. We need to understand where we started and where we're going. Sometimes we have to go much backward to the first idea we had. And with AI, we cannot do that because we are ceding control. We're giving control to the tool. We are not having that control anymore. We're just passive users of something. And of course, there are many errors that come with AI models, for example, hallucinations. So it doesn't understand what it's doing, and especially when it starts to have too many queries, asking for too many tokens, so answers back to you, it does produce bigger and bigger errors. So it's a very frustrating tool to use. I would say what's important for us is to develop the most lateral thinking approach you can to any creative endeavor, and especially a visual one like ours, so being a concept artist or illustrator. So thinking outside of the box, it's really what's important here, if you want to be learning in a good way, in a compelling way. AI is dangerous for references as well. We don't have control of what kind of references it used to produce its own images, and we don't understand how it put things together. And this means that even there, in looking for references, we are leaving a lot out because we are not screening them by themselves. We're just getting there with the fastest and cheapest answer that we have been given. So we would say that AI-made reference is basically an hallucination. I would say that life looks a bit like an hallucination entirely these days, not only for technology, but in general. What it's important to understand is how to use references. We said that we can use AI, but it can lead to hallucination, it can lead to being in the median zone, it leads to the cheapest answer, but we don't have to ignore the process of creating art. The references are still useful. We just need to use them with the most and clearest control of the entire pipeline. And this is an example from Norman Rockwell to see how close a reference can be. Of course, if you see a photo in the painting, it's easy to say, oh, okay, but the photo basically does everything. Outside of showing that there are many changes being done, he did compose the photo, and the storytelling scene from start to finish was entirely his own. So it's not about the tool. It's about controlling the creative process. There are also the problems that come with AI, of course, the creative bottleneck, as we were saying, and we can speak about it because I have experienced this on work, especially when you work for Chinese companies like Riot Games, Tencent, or Lightspeed. They do ask you often to try and implement this kind of technology, and I have to say, let me tell you this to hopefully bring a smile to your faces. They fail miserably every time they try to use AI in pipeline. So that's still the case, and that it's creating a bottleneck. I find myself on work having to, trying to implement what they ask me to, and then argue with them that I'm losing more time than if I went there and did the task myself. So it is a bottleneck, and they're starting to slowly understand it. They still have their, moments of doubt where they think, "Oh no, this technology is too important. Everyone is using it. We have to implement it." And every now and then they go back to it and try to use it, but they still fail, and it creates a lot of pipeline issues. And then there is the copyright risk. As I was saying, if you individual artists go through the entire process of looking for references, you have a track in your head and references to say, I use this, this, and this, and I did it in this way. When an AI does that for you, you're completely giving that autonomy away, and it can lead to very big copyright risks because you may be using material in an improper way, which is already a problem when you use references and you inspire yourself to other people as an artist. You do have to be careful, right? In this case, with AI, it's even harder. So that's already a big risk. So poor quality, inconsistency, incompleteness, technical issues. There are a lot of things that AI is not doing great. And to make it short, what the industry really needs is not a pretty picture, is not someone that does, it's more part of the job, and that's it. They need creatives, they need thinkers, they need people that solve problems so they understand the context, so they can get their product done in the best way possible, in the fastest way possible, with the highest level of quality. So that's what we try to achieve. And as a quote, technology is a useful servant, but a dangerous master. That's very, very important. And this is our presentation. It was a short one. I hope it was just for us an introduction to start talking about things.
So please go ahead with all the questions. We'd love to hear.
Any questions, okay? Literally any questions. If you want, we can start from what I just said while you type down your questions or raise your hands. There are any raised hands yet? Not yet? Okay. So, cool.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
That's a big question.
That's a big and great question. Yeah.
Why should I pay to study if AI will do my job? That's okay. There's many things to this that I think need to be addressed. So the first one is actually what Andrea just said, the very last thing you just talked about, the misconception about what it actually means to do the job. Again, nobody is ever paid just to draw a beautiful picture. That's just not what the work entails. It is part of it. You need to be able to draw. You need to have solid drawing skills, obviously. But the drawing is just a means to an ulterior end. What's the end? What's the goal? The goal, like Andrea just said, is to solve a problem. Studios, productions, they need artists because they have problems that need to be solved. And this is especially true in concept art, because the role of a concept artist is to continuously solve problems, even sometimes before others are aware that they exist, because you are in charge of building the rules that that basically command the world that is being created visually. So an experienced concept artist already knows how not to create certain kind of problems. For example, if we're talking about a 3D product for the next department, the modeler, this is very apparent in video games, where sometimes there is some constraints because of animations, movements. You may have to pay particular attention to the shoulders, or depending on where the camera is, the silhouette, the readability, and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff cannot be automated by AI. It doesn't work. But that obviously is not just it. I mean, that's just part of the answer to the question. Another thing that I think is quite important and has to be taken into consideration is the fact, this idea that basically AI will do the job. So let's say that what I just said is not true, or at least is not completely true. So let's say that AI can actually do at least part of the job, which looks like it. At least the grunt work looks like it can be done, parts of it at least quite easily with just the right prompt. Now, what does that mean exactly for people who are studying? In my opinion, it means two things. The first thing is that the barrier of entry is actually a little higher. So you need to study, not necessarily more, but you surely need to study more effectively. You need to be better on average to land a job. And this, by the way, is also something that happened years ago when 3D animation was created and 2D animators were afraid that they would be out of a job. And the second thing is that there will be a point where, and this is already starting in for many companies, there will be a point where companies will understand that they will need people. Now, why do I say that? There's a lot of discussions on what is called the geometry of the workforce in these big companies, the organigram, right? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be A-shaped, V-shaped, diamond-shaped? So a lot of people think that now with AI, you're going to have this diamond thing where basically you have nobody at the base, quite a few people in the middle, and then a smaller amount of people at the top. There will be the, the management and stuff. Now, this, for all intents and purposes, is all great theoretically because it means that you need fewer people to do the job. But there is a logical issue that many people, in my opinion, are not talking about. What happens when the people in the middle retire? You're going to have a gap because everyone who does any job in the world, basically, most of the learning they do on the job. So if there is a hole in this sort of passage, so if there is a missing link, you're going to have a real problem because with time, mid resources can become senior resources can become lead. But when the lead retire, when the seniors go away, who's going to be the next mid-level artist? AI is not obviously going to be able to cover that. So this, in my opinion, is actually a great time to study because right now the job market is not great. But again, what most people don't really think about or don't talk about is the fact that the job market has always been cyclical. So it's never been a straight line. It's always been ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. So there's always been mass hiring, mass layoffs, mass hiring, mass layoffs. It goes in cycle. Now, it's impossible to know the duration of the cycle when you're in it. But if you look at the historical data, it's always been like that. And the best time to study, to focus on learning, is during actually the downtimes. Because in theory, then, when the job market opens up, you're already trained, so you're ready to look for a job. It's obviously quite a bit worse if when everybody's hiring, you are studying, and then the cycle ends, and when you're ready to start working, nobody's hiring. So I don't know. This is my personal take on this. I don't know if Andrea wants to add anything to this question.
Yeah, no, there isn't much to add to that. I also believe that it is a good moment to study this, especially because of the reasons Paolo was saying. So being a bit of a downturn in the market, and at the same time, understanding where you are compared to the technology. I see some of the questions coming up, and we'll go through each one of them. But there is one thing that I would like to point out before we start. When we talk about AI, I think there is a bit of an ideological concern, because it's not just putting you in danger of not having a job. You are literally questioning what's your role overall, not just as an artist, because it looks like he's taking away the most humane part of you. And that's a belief. It's not the truth. When we're going through some of the questions, like what companies are doing with it, what you're hearing from other teachers coming to teach to you, know that you are surrounded by a very thick cloud of belief. And this technology needs to be pushed on all of us. It's mandatory for them to push this technology to all of us. That doesn't mean that at some point it will all crumble and disappear completely, although a big part of it will probably explode in 1,000 pieces. Some of it will be left. But what is still there, it's what are you doing with your training, with your art? Do you believe that you're basically just someone putting references together? Or do you believe there is something that you're adding to it? And we can talk about that. There is a question about that specifically. But while we go through this and we analyze, what's the job market, what's the technical aspects of it, you have to understand analyzing yourselves and how you perceive you compared to the technology. Many things that we're saying, we're giving it for granted. We are almost in a call like I have these feelings when we talk with students and we do events like this. There's a bit of a surrender to this. Like, it's there, it's been done, it's declared. How do I survive? In a way, we do have to talk about that as well, but we need to understand how much reality is in there, because what they're pushing to us is meant to put us in doubt so that it can be adopted in the way these companies want it to be. Okay, I don't want to speak too much about it. Let's go through questions, and I'm sure lots of what I have in mind is going to come up, if you agree, Paolo.
Next question from Jenny. AI seems to put a lot of pressure on us artists. What would you say to someone stressing themselves to become better at art quickly?
Yeah.
Stress is not doing any favor.
That's the thing. That's why I started from there. Because from this moment till the end of the conversation, it's all about stress, right? I don't think anyone is happy of talking about this, I suppose. No one wants to deal with this. It's pretty bad by every means. So stressing yourself, start by putting in doubt what's your value. Think about it carefully. You can stress yourself less if you start understanding where you're positioned. And I know that there isn't a great job being done out there or what it is being an artist. And as Paolo was saying, to get into the industry, it is becoming a bit more complicated because some of the grunt work that made you have experience to move forward is now sometimes being done by these tools. But if you understand that you are a creative lead in a studio, even when you're very, very young and getting out of school, that you're not just executing. You're not just executing someone else's idea. You're looking for visual solutions because you can interpret reality and pass your interpretation of reality to the viewer of that content. That's what AI doesn't do. If you really start questioning yourself and even thinking about, you know what, I'm going to use generative AI to help me because that's the technology. Trust me, you're going to reduce your ability to be valuable for a company. Because a company needs creatives. And that's why in the market, you will notice that it's hard to enter now, but seniors usually get hired and still get hired. There is always senior positions coming up, right? Because the thinking process, which we usually ascribe only to people with experience, is something that you can actually do. So we cannot deny this to get into the industry. What I would suggest for you to become better at art is trying to understand that you're not just executing, you're studying. So you do your proper reference research, don't rush to finish to produce a beautifully painted illustration, because that was never enough to start with, but for sure it is not enough now to get into the industry. You really need to show that you're doing your homework, that even when you're working in the style of the company that you like, let's say you want to enter Blizzard Entertainment and work on Diablo 4, I don't know. You can execute the way they do, but the characters, the environments, the illustrations you propose need to add something to that. You need to adopt lateral thinking to solve those problems. So don't look at what AI generates and what It's the first answer of AI-generated content on Pinterest to guide your thoughts. Read, watch movies, write what you think. Remember to write. Making art is exactly as writing to me. We talked about this with a previous group of students from a Greek university a few weeks ago, and I stand by it firmly. If you have an idea of a character, of a story, or a keyframe, put it in writing. Make it make sense through language. When you see that the story is there, that you know that the plan is clear, then execute on the plan. And every time there is a gap in knowledge on the way you're executing, stop, go online, look for the references you need. Don't look for the material that is already out there now. So if you're going to do a character for Overwatch, yes, look at the style, look at the way they execute, look at the visual culture, but don't just try to reference what's out there from that company now. Go back, look for other references, look for, I don't know, theatrical costumes, look for the opera for scenography. Go back into the past, look for Golden Age illustrators, still go there and look there for stylistic reference and guidance as well, for composition, for taste. Look at movies, good ones, not Marvel movies if you need to do a keyframe for Marvel. Look at important movies, great directors, so that you can have a different approach to the same task. I hope this makes sense. It's a long conversation and we have a lot to go through, but I hope it helps.
Okay, next question is Joseph. How is using generated artwork any different from using 3D kit bashing and or photos for concepting? Oh, that's completely different actually. So I'm gonna start on this one, then I'll let you finish.
Go.
I'm gonna answer this with an example from animation. Okay, so if you are an animator, you have to use a lot of reference because you may be asked to do like a fight scene or some kind of complex body mechanics, and you may not really be sure how that is performed at an exact level. But also there's a lot of amazing animations that have already been done, right? So there's plenty of better, more experienced animators who have already done animations on stuff like that. But then why? One of the very first things that they teach you in animation is never use animation as a reference for animation. Always use real world examples to understand your animation. Because despite of the quality, somebody else's work is already a synthesis of something else, it's an interpretation. So there's going to be choices that have already been made for you. There's going to be things that are stressed, things that are ignored, and that is gonna, the focus that the animator has put on his or her animation will already affect the way in which you might move forward, simply because obviously you are being led by what's happening. So when it comes to generating images with AI, it's a little bit of the same, in my opinion. If you only use AI to get references, you're going to incur in a few problems. First one is images are going to be extremely self-referenced, not necessarily in the output, because with the right prompts, you might have outputs that look quite different. But they're always going to be extremely self-referenced in the way in which the AI creates these images. So the lateral thinking, the critical thinking that we were talking about earlier is not happening. So if you use it extensively for over a long period of time, you will see that things will start to look very much the same. And your atrophy, your creative atrophy, will actually prevent you from coming up with great prompts that are gonna really make the AI do the best that it can and create something truly interesting that you can take as a reference to create something even better, because that's just not the way it works. The human brain is lazy. We are lazy beings. every time that we are given the option of doing something more easily, we just go for it. And that is not something necessarily based, just human nature. So it happens in language, it happens in various aspects of life. I don't know, it's the reason why we drive cars instead of riding a horse, right? It's the reason why we order stuff from Amazon rather than going to the shop just under where we live and stuff like that. So when you use kick bashing or 3D, you are actively involved in the creative process because you need to make choices. The choices that you're making are problems, small problems that you need to solve. From those problems, you might come with ideas that leads you to other references and that give you other solutions. If you take all the reasoning away, you're left with nothing. It's like if while you're learning the, I'm not sure how it's called in English, like 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 2 = 3. Like if while you're learning, it's before you learn that, what if before you learn that someone immediately gives you not even a calculator, just the AI that does all the calculations for you. You don't even need to be concerned with what you're supposed to be typing on the calculator. You just have the answer. What does that do to your mathematical reasoning? It's, in my opinion, it's the same with art, but I'd love to also hear what Andrea has to say on this.
Yeah, totally. It's yet again, it's all about what you think it's your role in the creative process. So if you think that you're actually just putting references together and your ability to draw is only to represent something, not necessarily giving it the story, just represent, then of course I would also question myself and think, so what I'm getting paid for? An AI does produce an image, and it's not that different than using photo references or 3D models. But it's not about the execution. In history of art, it was never about the execution. It was never actually about the painting technique. Okay, there were always methods to cut corners when it comes to art. In the Renaissance, they were using the camera lucida, which is a device to reflect an image they were looking at through a mirror on the paper, so they could catch exactly what they were seeing. Ciao, Laura and Filippo. They just wrote behind. So using the tool is not about it, it's what you do with the tool. Okay? It is not about executing, it's not just about putting things together. It's the fact that AI is purposely being made to take autonomy out of you. Remember it. If you believe that they're making this tool, which is a very big selling point for them to help you, you are seriously mistaken and not reading the room. That's my strong belief. I'm not afraid of saying how I see things. I can be mistaken. I invite anyone to argue with this. But I honestly think that the way they're presenting it, if you look at it and its evolution, they're not trying to make it useful in a pipeline. They're trying to make it so it is easier and easier to adopt, which in their mind is not about you making cooler things. It's about everyone making shitty things in mass. And by the way, all the things that they are producing go through 1 or 2 or 3 companies, private companies. We can argue if there are ways to use the AI to train it with your own material to produce art that is useful for you in a way that is compelling and useful for the pipeline. It can be done, potentially. I'm not saying that the tool or the technology is absolutely useless. But I'm saying when you approach it and you approach it with their narration of things, and everything in life is narration, honestly, you are probably getting trapped in their way of thinking, which is, this is something that you should use because it's going to help you. No, they're actually trying to train it by you using it so they can get rid of you as fast as they can. Okay? I'm failing at it. That's the good part of it for now.
Okay, Leonardo. I had a concept artist working in the film industry come to talk to my university, and they were talking about how Marvel is already using generative AI and have concept artists fix and paint over the images AI generated. Even though they haven't completely replaced concept artists, it seems at least Marvel Studios are hiring less concept artists because of AI. This is worrying me quite a lot, but what do you think? It's the same. It's much of the same of what we're talking about now. Actually, I think the answer to this can also link to the next question, which I'm going to read together, and I think we can make a slightly broader consideration, because the next question is, from your observation and experience from within the industry, is there any sign that company studios are leaning more towards generative AI models or becoming more pro-human artists? It's pretty scary seeing studios using these AI models, especially with how they currently function off of stolen work from artists. So I think the problem right now with a lot of companies, not all of them, mind you, but a lot, especially the big one, is linked to the fact that there are expectations linked to the use of this kind of technology. So especially in certain parts of the world, there is this idea in certain circles that if you're using AI, you're riding the wave into the future, whereas if you're not using it, you're wasting people's time or stuff like that, because AI is awesome, AI is the future, AI can do everything. So there is a push for many of these companies to try and integrate AI because their stock prices might go higher. Investors might feel like these companies are keeping up with the times and stuff like that. But at the same time, and don't take my word for it, just Google this, just have a look by yourself. There's a lot of reports that basically no company in the world is seeing any kind of concrete benefit, of real benefit from the implementation of AI, meaning that companies are spending money on AI and they're not getting any money in return out of it, because productivity has not seen any increase whatsoever. What's happening in some of these companies is that if they are more linked to the AI ecosystem, is that they're firing people so that they can save that money to invest it in AI, which in turn makes them then go back and try to hire some of the people they fired, or some of the roles that they use those people for, to fix the problems that AI has created. And there's like a plethora of articles talking about what happened. I think just like last week or a couple of weeks ago, like Amazon fired a bunch of people, and then their system, the Amazon Web Services, went down because AI, the AI model basically screwed something up because it misinterpreted something, and then they had to call human beings to put the system back up and to fix what the AI did. And that was a lot of money. Okay, and we're talking about Amazon, which is one of the biggest companies in the world that is heavily invested in this ecosystem. So obviously, when you're going to have a company like Disney, Marvel is Disney, right? They're very, very big. They want to try to give the image to the public that they are on board with this AI thing. But the feeling I'm getting from outside is that they're either not asking themselves certain questions, or they are asking themselves those questions, but they don't care because their only concern is the immediate image return. I want our company stocks today to be associated with this. What happens tomorrow is tomorrow's problem. I don't care. In my personal opinion, this is not the kind of reasoning or planning that can get most people particularly far. And these companies are lucky that they have so much money that they can afford to make a bunch of these huge mistakes and still be in business, because if you had a smaller studio, okay, and you decided to switch on AI, and then what you create just doesn't go well, you're done. All you need is like one bad production, and you're covered in debt. You have to close shop and fire everyone, and that's the end of the story. So Disney and Marvel, you know, they're lucky, but not everybody is as lucky. So you also need to take into consideration the fact that there's, at least right now, there is backlash from the public. So when you create a video game or when you create a movie or something, your clients are the people who are going to use that product, right? So Larian Studios, the studio that made Baldur's Gate, right? During an interview a few weeks ago, they said that they use Gen AI in part of their production, in part of their pre-production, not to replace people, but just as to explore ideas and stuff like that. And the internet went crazy. It went to the point where they had to make statements and reassure everybody that humans are working on their projects, that they are just a technology company, so they like to experiment with different technologies, and that they will never use AI to involve. They will never involve AI in the actual creation of art. People were outraged by it, but if they hadn't said anything, you know, maybe people wouldn't have even known. But what I'm trying to say is, you cannot have it both ways. You either ride the AI wave because you want people to know that you're part of the AI revolution, and then people will know that you're using it, or you don't use it, and it's okay. So, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, no, it's exactly like that. And by the way, I don't remember the study exactly that was giving, the rough numbers of the companies failing, but it was really something. It was like 95%,
94, 95.
Companies adopting AI are not making any revenue.
Yeah.
Not a bit of revenue, any revenue. So yes, Marvel is trying to use it. How is Marvel doing it, by the way? I would say as not particularly going great. And I'm sorry for that, because if it doesn't go well, they have to fire people. And by the way, there is something else about the AI narration when it comes to, them not hiring concept artists or not hiring people, because we see our little world, right? The art world. There is a lot of other professions, even in the entertainment industry, that are getting affected. And the talk is that you're not getting hired because AI is doing it in your place, which they tried to a year and a half ago. Now it's an excuse, because they have investors. If they say that AI is not the cause of these layoffs, it means that the business is not going well. So they have to say that they're doing it because they are adopting new technology, and all the money that they're wasting is because the future will be better with this investment. If they say that it's not working, that they're firing because it's simply not working, their model is not working, they're not producing compelling movies, for example, then it's a pretty different story for investors. All these companies are in the stock market. You have to remember it. I know that it looks like it doesn't touch us because we are, little people standing at the side looking at big numbers on an index of the stock market, but it does really impact how they work. Amazon is going to do their layoffs based on their evaluation, and they're going to hire back if their evaluations happen, which, for example, Microsoft is doing now because of the outstanding mess they created with Windows using AI to code and then crashing it completely. And a lot of other things are going that way. So yes, we are in a battle, I would say, where they try to push something, they really try to push it down our throats as much as they can, and then we find that we are adapting ourselves, because the narration from the people with the power is that it is inevitable, but it's only because they want you to believe that, because if we also believe it, then maybe it's going to become inevitable, and all this waste of money that they had is going to lead to someone. It's so actually scary in both ways, because my belief is not going to lead to much, and it's still a big economical problem. But at least at some point, it will fix itself if you will be ready to get the chance, if you will study in the appropriate way. Yes, Marvel is going to use artists to paint. On top, I heard this. I also know other companies that do this from time to time. This is a lack of leadership from the company, probably, because they want to push stuff out because they are not having revenue. And but this is not the final answer. Don't think that's the answer. Get better. Understand that you're not just someone that painted over before. Because the way, if you read the post, right, it's easy to think, yes, now they're using AI because basically an artist, what it does, it produces an images and that's it. And now the AI can produce something similar. I just have to paint over to fix it. That's not what you do. It could be something that you do when you start in the industry. And now it is unfortunately not enough. You have to do more to get into the industry. I'm not denying that. But the way you do more is not by not believing in your own ability to innovate and create. It's the opposite. Is to think laterally, to do all the things that we're discussing, to execute well. You have to draw very well. One thing that we haven't touched on, and I don't see in the question, is that in my line of work, what I see being a very useful skill, contrary to all the, against all the odds in this time, is actually drawing. Art directors ask you to draw fast, live, in front of everyone. They want you to draw fast. If you are able to express yourself fast and elegantly, so a good line, a good understanding of anatomy, nice perspective, they can rely on you because you're able to transmit ideas. That's our job, is to create and transmit ideas to the rest of the team and to the people that watches the content. It's not just to paint and fix. We are not painting walls in a house, That's not our job. So, yes, at this time in history, it can be complicated to get work for Marvel if they do that. There are other companies that are not doing that. I can assure you of it. You just have to get ready and be better. That's for sure. Be better than what it was before.
Aiden is asking, what are some methods to train your creative and logical thinking skills while outside of art? That's an interesting question.
Okay. Well, it's not that. It's an easy question and at the same time a bit of expected answer from me. So to train outside of art, you have to train outside of art. You have to actually be interested in things that are not necessarily related to drawing. It can be music. It can be visual. It can still be cinematography, for example. It can be writing. I strongly suggest, as I said at the start, if you want to exercise your critical thinking, write your art, write your characters down, write the synopsis of your story, write it in a good way, like learn how to write it, because it will clarify your mind on where to go. So one way to exercise what's useful for art is in some way exercising other skills that are still in the creative field, like writing, for example, or composing music, and apply it. I know that it sounds a bit off the track, but trust me, it does work. I can tell you another thing, for example. Don't disdain passions that have to do with studying culture. Like me and Paolo, we have a different background from what you expect. We studied Chinese language and religions and philosophy of the Far East. That's what our training before becoming artists and founders of schools and so on and so forth. And now I find myself valuing that kind of study a lot. Because what I'm asked, it's not just about me drawing nice pictures. It's me literally throwing curveballs to the design problems. So lateral ways of approaching the design. And I can do that because in my mind, my references are not just the products. It's a lot. It's a whole world of cultures, of religious structures and stories and legends that are out there that a lot of people don't reference because they go to art school, they study concept art, painting, volume, they do their image and they think that's it, I'm ready. It's not enough anymore. It wasn't enough before to get a very good career. Now it's even less important. Now you have to go back and think, this character, where it is, what's the goal of it? What's the fantasy of it? Where can I find it in the real world that inspires me without going to look for the most immediate things, which is another concept from another artist doing the same thing. I hope this helps with the question.
Okay, Lubomir, looking at the AI, how one should consider the need to learn a specific program like Blender, Maya, ZBrush, etc., or should one rather focus on knowing the workflow in specific thing, grooming the best you can, etc.? If you ask me, I think it's always the skill. The underlying skill always comes first, because programs are just tools. They're just, again, they're just means to an end. If you're into 3D grooming, obviously it's great if the tool you use is the standard industry, because you may be asked to use that if you are hired in a studio. But like if you're a freelance, you can use whatever you want. And if your grooming skills are good, learning to do those in a new program is not going to take that much time, to be honest. So it's, for me, it's always the skill always commands everything else, because tomorrow Blender could stop existing, Autodesk could go bankrupt, Adobe could be launched on a sky rocket to Mars, whatever. Like you will not be paid for being the best at using Photoshop, but you will be paid for having, like Andrea was saying, good drawing skills and solving problems. That's always the case. So skill beats program any day of the week for me. Elena, I'm not sure. Hi, your presentation was wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. The question I have is based on my experience. Some clients, I work freelance, send me emails saying they won't hire me anymore because AI. How can you stay motivated or know what to try?
Paolo, you're breaking up, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Now?
Yeah.
What about now?
Better.
Okay, sorry. So I work freelance. Some clients I work freelance send me emails saying that they won't hire me anymore because AI does it faster. How can you stay motivated or know what to prioritize in today's concept art industry environment? It's kind of demotivating, and it feels like it's impossible to be fast enough to compete. I'm really sorry to hear about this, actually. That's not great.
It's a double-faceted problem. I don't know exactly the client, and I don't know your experience, so I don't want to. I don't have all the context for it. But I would say that the client that is ready to say that, it isn't necessarily a very valuable client to go after.
Yeah.
So you probably need to start inquiring. I know it sounds tough, but you need to start inquiring about what I'm doing with my skills, what I'm presenting, and where I want to be tomorrow in terms of being an artist. So if you think you can up the game of your work, like make it look cooler and more interesting, do it, because you need to look for better studios. Those studios, I don't know, as I said, I don't know, but are probably not paying the standard most of the time. They're expecting you to be fast because they are usually on a budget, or they're trying to make a quick buck with whatever art you're producing. So keep them, and if you can, keep working and put money aside, but make a plan to move out of that kind of thing. Okay. At the same time, for concept art, I know that you want to be concept artist and you get there, but you can get there through other means as well. You can become a successful concept artist even by working on comics and then moving to concept art and animation. I have many good friends of mine that made a wonderful career in animation coming from comics, for example, or becoming an illustrator, even a children's book illustrator, and then moving to be an artist in the industry. There are many ways where you can exercise your skills, getting paid to do that in a cool way, tell stories, without necessarily thinking that if I do it in another area, it's not going to help me in concept art. It's not the case anymore. Trust me. I am a good friend with an artist that just won an Emmy, Gigi Cavenago. He is a comic book artist. He did covers for Dylan Dog, an Italian publisher. And after that, he was hired to art direct for the first time an episode of Love, Death and Robots. And it was a big success. He won the Emmy. He won the Emmys as well for art direction. And he is now working in Spider-Verse. He comes from comics. He comes from illustration. Because the sensibility is something different from what you see in concept art. This is also a lateral approach to even the execution, Even for me, which I have a background in comics that I studied, some of the things that you find there, or in illustration, you can apply in an expanded way your taste for specific compositions that you find in artists that you look for in other places. It's great to have Craig Marlins, for example, or a big splash artist from League of Legends as your guiding light. But in my opinion, it's better if you add that with someone that is a master at composition and art from the past, or a great movie director from which you can literally, inspire yourself and apply to something modern, because that makes your art fresh and it allows you to move faster into the ladder. And having companies looking at your work and thinking, that actually I've never seen. And trust me, there isn't a lot of concept artists doing that.
Joseph wrote a question, but it's in two separate messages, so I'm gonna read them one after the other. So, what if there's a way artists can control what goes in and what comes out of generative tools to benefit their workflows? Can the same critical thinking be applied to the outputs you receive, choosing what you find interesting in a generated output and leaving what you don't?
Yeah.
Yes. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, as I was saying, if the question is, for example, can I download an open source AI model and tailor it to my needs with my own art? Yes, it could work, I believe. If you get to particularly good at drawing and lateral thinking and reference research, you're probably even faster by doing it the traditional way. That is still the case. I'm not saying it cannot work, but I think it can still be faster and have a better result. The thing with generative tools is not that they are not, the idea behind it doesn't work. I mean, it would be cool to have something that suggests something useful, right? It's like talking to your colleagues and getting a feedback, let's say. But unfortunately, by default, by the way the technology works, and also just to add a small note at the side, the technology is finished, by the way. The development for LLMs has reached its maximum completion. They have to move, and you're probably hearing about that, to other models because that's done. So that said, what they can produce, because they stole every material possibly available on Earth, it's always the average. And the average doesn't contain mistakes. That's why it's average. You always look for something finished that looks compelling to look at, and you disregard the mistakes that you can do in the process. The mistakes is the cool part about making art. It's the ambiguity in your process. If you don't do the process and you don't commit the mistake, you cannot innovate. I have many things that I discover in my character design, in my illustration, because I did a mark where it wasn't intended to do, or I did a shape that I haven't actually planned, and it leads the entire illustration, for example. If you use a tool that gives you the average of an answer, that part you cannot have. You could argue, yes, but maybe I can work on top and then maybe later on having mistakes. Yes, but it's already like, having the idea of someone else in your mind. And it's very hard when the argument is compelling, when someone tells you something with charisma, let's say, and you start to believe it, it's hard for you to move away from it. AI does a bit of that in the average, cheapest way possible. So you see something that is finished and finalized, you see it, and it's hard for you to get away from it because it is an answer. But trust me, it is not the final answer. It is not the good answer. So get total control of your tools. It's not easy, but you have to become very good at painting and drawing, composition, and storytelling especially. And then we can argue if there is a tool that can help you. But for you guys that are either studying or just starting out, it is very important that you master the tools. Trust me that people in power are not teaching their kids to use generative AI. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm pretty sure that what critical thinker from what they believe are going to lead others. You have to be the leaders there and the innovators. That's what we try to teach. In order to do that, you have to learn the tool. You cannot escape from your learning. I would say, I think we're both on the same page. We are on the same page with Paolo. Now you have to study even more what it was traditional studying than before. Even, even schools, universities, high schools are going back and actually forbidding students from using AI because they are scoring badly. It's not about feelings. Like the entire educational system that uses it and pushes it as this is the innovation, you have to use it, it's just a tool, is performing very badly. They perform badly in every discipline because they don't think anymore. They don't know the tools. If you don't know what drawing is, you cannot judge the line quality of an AI-generated image. If you don't know what composition is, you cannot judge the composition of an AI-generated image, and so on. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah. Also, like, I'd like to add a couple of things to the.
Sure.
I think part of so you remember during the presentation, there was like a bell curve, right? What Andrea was referring to before as the average, everything being average, right? So the average is mediocre, okay? Mediocre is not bad, but it's not good either. It's in the middle. AI is really good at doing stuff that it's in the middle because that's what their prediction model is based on, right? I make a prediction on average of what is more of which pixel is more likely to appear here and which is more likely to appear next to it, and so on and so forth. So if you, but I think that how can I say? I don't think there's ever been an artist in any discipline whose aim was to be average, right? Because the place art comes from is not that. Nobody wants to be the accountant of art and like, oh, I do the average really nice and it's tidy and but it's empty. Nobody wants that. The ability to put yourself, to put storytelling, to give your contribution to the thing that you're doing is maybe I dare say the very reason why people are into art at all in general. If we were able to do art completely detached from it without putting anything that belongs to us in it, why would anyone do it, right? So, so there's that, and then at the same time, I would argue, maybe in a bit of a provocative way, because obviously I can already imagine the objection that somebody might raise, but if you have all the time to train your AI model and to do it to your liking and to try and exercise your critical thinking into using the preferred outputs that your AI that you trained and did and you used to your liking, why don't you actually use the same amount of time to do something that is completely unrelated to art? Because that's most likely where you're going to get great ideas from by, like I was saying, by reading a book, by doing some kind of sport, a vacation, talking to others, seeing something in the real world, playing a video game, watching a good movie. Like, that's where inspiration comes from. Again, the risk of doing something that is perfectly tailored to what you think are your needs and then become incredibly repetitive and self-referenced is a lot more concrete than most people think, because it doesn't happen from one moment to the next. Is what we call the boiling frog, right? Frog is in the pot. At the beginning, the water is cold. Then slowly, the temperature of the water rises gradually, and then the frog is boiled and done for. But the frog doesn't realize it because it happens very, very gradually. So just like what Andrea was saying, just like the problem with using AI in education and the atrophy and the fact that the mental atrophy and the fact that makes people score worse in the same tests, I believe that not necessarily using, but overusing these tools might lead to this. Again, the tool itself is just a tool. It's not good or bad per se, but it does create a danger, this specific tool, because whereas other tools just made some parts of the process faster, this tool takes, like I was saying, takes the reasoning away from you. This tool tries to automate things, and if you lose the ability of doing those things, then you will not be able to create art anymore, because those are exactly the processes that you need, that your brain needs to create it in the first place. At least these are my 2 cents. By the way, kudos to Canopy Layer, who always walks to his local store. And hi, Maria and Filippo. Nice seeing you here. Longs. I can't wait for the AI bubble to burst. Oh, okay. I can't wait for the AI bubble to burst. It's starting to deflate now, but the shiny new thing hype is slowing. It has to slow because it's, again, the hype was built on unrealistic promise. Like Andrea was saying, AI, artificial intelligence. It's so I gave this example the other day. I don't know if any of you guys has ever seen the video. There is a very, very funny video of a guy who tests the reasoning skills of I think it was ChatGPT, but I'm not sure. And it asked the following question: I need to take my car to the car. I need to wash my car. I live 100 meters from the car wash. How should I get to the car wash? And ChatGPT's first answer was, oh, well, you're living 100 meters from the car wash. Why should you stress yourself with driving, traffic, and polluting? Just walk there. It's the best choice by far. It's so close. It's also bad. It's also good for your health. So then the follow-up question was, okay, so if I walk there, how is my car gonna get washed? To which the answer was something like, oh, when you get to the car wash, you're gonna find a bunch of professionals who will be more than happy to help you with all your needs in relation to your car cleaning. And then just in the end, the guy said, yes, but if I walk to the car wash and I don't have my car with me, how would the people at the car wash be able to actually wash the car? And then the ChatGPT actually understood, just realized that the solution it was supposed to give is you have to drive your car to the car wash. But this is, it's quite funny, right? But it's just an example of the fact that what is being sold as intelligence is not intelligent at all. Again, it's just a prediction model. It predicts the words or the pixels or the sounds or the outcomes that are most likely to be one next to the other. And that's also, I'm not saying that this technology would disappear, because it will not, but I think that expectations on its usage will probably change quite significantly, because for now, what it demands in terms of energy and investments, and what it delivers in terms of productivity are completely disconnected. There's literally hundreds of billions of dollars being spent on AI with nothing, zero, to be shown for in terms of output. So it will probably end up in a very different way from what many people fear it will. Joseph, again, I 100% agree with your perspective on the marketing surrounding AI usage. Do you think the rejection of AI usage outright plays into their narrative. It feels similar to the advent of digital painting and 3D animation, as you said, but this time around, we shortcut the peer review process of using the technology properly. Great conversation, by the way. I think it's necessary to work through all. Thank you very much, Joseph. Yeah, like I was saying, to me at least, it's a disconnect because, like, until now, the slogan, right, the big thing is, we want to democratize art, right? If you have a good idea, why should you not be able to do something with it just because you don't have the technical skills? Well, that's the answer. Because you don't have the technical skills, because the technical skills, the art, the mastery of something is also the thing that gives you feedback and gives you a way to understanding if not only how to translate your idea to the final project, but also if you're doing it in a way that works or not. And this is something very complex because think about it, even before AI, there were good movies and there were really bad movies. There were great games and really poor games and so on and so forth. So the creation of these products are something very, very difficult by itself. So it's not something to be given for granted. But if you democratize democratizing is a fancy way for saying make useless, because you know what a job that existed last century was? It was the guy inside buildings with elevators who used to press the button for you. Where did that guy go? He disappeared. Not because the technology of elevators replaced him, but simply because we democratized elevators. Like, it doesn't make sense if every single person on the planet can do something, that thing by itself has no value. Okay, so if anyone can write cyberpunk monkey doing martial arts against Keanu Reeves, then what's the point of even doing it? It doesn't make any sense. And again, from a commercial standpoint, nobody's going to pay you to do something that they can do by themselves. That's not what this line of work is in the first place. Jenny, oh, sorry.
No, what you said, it's very cool. There was this girl last time we spoke about this. The question on then why they do it. Then if in the end it's not going to work like this, why do companies constantly push it? We said that there is the big investment, but even with the thing of talking about the investment they made and trying to justify it, doesn't look like a good economic model in the future, right? If no one works and no one produces something of value to get paid for, then who consumes what? And the thing that is putting us in a state of anxiety is that we believe that they have a plan. I personally don't believe that they have a plan. I personally think that they want to make the highest possible revenue today. And if tomorrow it blows up, like it probably will, that's it. The state will pay. So trust in the fact that what you do is valuable and give time to this thing to boil over and really get the shape that it's going to have. It has uses. We never discussed it, but there are a couple of uses that came out in the last 3-4 years that they're trying to push this down to us. And the only two that are really, really, unfortunately, useful cases is marketing, when they profile you to buy things using large language models, and the military, when they hope that the drone can get somewhere without the use of a human being behind it. That's the only two, unfortunately, use cases where it's finding itself to be useful. And are probably going to be the very few left, because everything else, as Paolo was saying before, is not working. Not because we think it's not, because data shows that it's not working. So trust in yourselves, guys, in the meantime.
So Jenny writes, I heard that concept art is the most difficult area as an aspiring video game artist to get hired for in a junior position compared to 3D. Would you agree? Maybe I think probably for smaller studios, but I'm not sure.
It is not The thing is, it is a very competitive area because it has to do with drawing. It is the tool. It's weird to talk about it, but actually the tool is not that important. That's why it's so competitive, because the creativity side of things and your personal way of expressing things is important. And to get there, it's very complicated. You need to really trust in the study process you have and really get good at what you do, composition, anatomy, because to compete, you're going to compete against the entire world, which is also another thing. I work remotely from Rome for these companies. So I am competing with people in the United States, which means that I'm competing, I'm being selected by a company amongst a lot of other candidates worldwide. In order to stand your place, stand your ground, and get hired, you really have to be good at specific things. You don't have to be good at everything, but you have to be good at specific things. So yes, it is harder than other places. It's not impossible, though, especially if you put in the work like we were describing before.
Andrea, what kind of advice would you give to a junior concept artist to start working in the animation video game industry? What's the best way to be hired? You want to take this one, or shall I?
Sure. I didn't hear the last part.
Sorry.
Okay.
What kind of advice would you give to a junior concept artist to start working in the animation video game industry? What's the best way to be hired?
Yeah, it's a complex question. You're gonna hear a lot of different versions of this. I don't know if what you mean is how to get there. So for sure, you're gonna need a portfolio. And about the portfolio, a lot of professionals are gonna tell you that you need to have a specialized portfolio. Of course, we are taking into account the fact that you have to have good art, first of all. So one way we approach it is in school, for example, in idea is instead of thinking of in a way that is too complicated, like I'm gonna need this and that, try to see what's the best thing that you do. If you're good at multiple things, then your portfolio, which will allow you to be hired because it is good, because it's the best that you do, will be focused on one or two elements. If you're good at only one thing, then be honest in reviewing your work and look at the consistency of the work you do. The work that you show needs to be consistent to be hired. Okay? If you show something that is very weak, like you do great characters, but your perspective is completely off in environments, it's impossible in my way of seeing things, because as we were saying, you need to know the tools of being an artist, so composition, perspective, and characters, even if you end up being a character designer. But let's say that your environment are pretty bad and your characters are pretty good, you're not going to show your environment, no matter how many pieces you have of that, just because you want to fill your portfolio. You need to show an image of consistency. And in some way, we could say you need to hide your weakness in front of the recruiters, especially recruiters, because the art department of companies are generally, of course, aware of the art process, and they can understand sketches differently. That's why to get into the industry is always useful to get into contact with artists, not just recruiters. There are also great recruiters out there that actually are artists and moved into human resources. But generally speaking, you want to avoid any misunderstanding, and so present work that is consistent on the qualitative side of things, and that has a vision. So the idea is the central part of being hired, and this means that you want to write about the characters on the images. You want to show the process. That's how you are valuable for them, because it means that you solve the visual problem. Okay? On how to get there, like resource-wise, outside of portfolio, as I was saying, reach out to artists, reach out to art directors, be gentle, be kind. Don't just go with, this is my work, please hire me. These are human beings. But start now, literally right now, adding people on LinkedIn, commenting their work or Instagram, and then slowly, bit by bit, have them notice you post work. Once they accept you as friends, they're gonna see it, and do this by building a base that goes on with time. If you don't do it now, you'll find yourself having to do it later, and it'll be much more stressful. If you just take the time to add one or two artists that you like, comment on their post every now and then, today, by the end of the year, it's gonna be hundreds. So that's one way. I don't know if this answers all the questions, but about this.
I would add, don't fall for the usual traps. Like think critically about the way you present your work, your portfolio to companies. So do some research. If you have a particular a portfolio that is big on a particular style, make sure that you apply to companies that have a compatible style, or companies that are working or about to work on projects where your skill set might be useful. Don't lose yourself in the apparently small details, like writing your contacts everywhere on your portfolio and stuff like that, because that could make the difference between a recruiter getting back at you when a recruiter say, you know what, I don't have time to look up the contact info. I'll just keep this portfolio and go to the next one. Always organize your work into projects. Show as much as you can that you understand the process, because again, nobody wants to see the pretty picture. People want to see if you understand the process, if you understand how to get the intended result. So like Andrea was saying, write stuff. If you're showing a character, where's the brief of the character? How am I supposed to be judging if this character fits the archetype you're going for? If it's just a picture, I won't be able to get it right. So, be careful about all these things. And again, like I was saying, networking is also very useful, both for already existing artists, but also with your peers. If you're in an environment when you're studying, make sure that you start building relationships with other students, because they might be your future colleagues in a certain studios, or they might be the people who refer you to the studio they're working for. So students and even your instructors, they're going to be your first point of contact into the job market. So be mindful of that. Bo, I studied illustration at university, and we had to use AI to create sample work and references. I hated it as it always looked bad. Is it common practice nowadays to use AI in the design process? So it's surely not common practice at Idea Academy, that I can tell you for sure. I honestly, like, when I hear stuff like this, like, you're not the first person we heard from who has attended a school or an academy where they had to use AI, but every single time I hear this, it's like, I don't know what to say, because it's to me, we just did a talk about this, so to me it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, especially in the part of your artistic journeys when you're building your skills. So to force this on people who need to build and strengthen their skills, to me is like, please do not tell me where you studied, because I don't want to know. But to me, that is conceptually wrong. It's like, if somebody thinks that making students use AI is going to be an advantage because it's going to teach them how to use a tool that they will need to use, I think this line of reasoning needs to be revisited a little bit, because it's a bit like if during the Renaissance somebody from the future came up with a camera, and they went to schools and bodegas and studios and said, no, 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 no. There's no need for you to understand how to just take a picture. Okay, happy, that's done. Bye, and then went away. You don't learn anything like that. It's useless. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I can tell you, like Andrea was saying, that some studios try to make use of AI or try to push it to see if there is an actual use case. But in the end, it's for like for the finished product, it's never really a thing.
By the way, this sounds that what Paolo is saying. We agree with that. I was shaking my head because I think it looks a bit. I don't know, but why would the school have you use a tool that doesn't allow you to learn? That's my opinion. That said, though, you are enrolled in that school. I'm sure there are many good parts of it. So if you think that part is not great, use it for something else.
Yep.
So use it for networking. Use it in a way that is useful for your career. We explained our position. It doesn't mean that we are absolutely correct and everyone else it's wrong. I believe that from what I see, Idea Academy is a bit of a different beast. Like we are artists just trying to share what we know and having people getting the everyday, knowledge of the industry. So we really want to make art. I do it every day. I've been doing this before the call. I've been doing this after the call. Concept art. That's my job. So I'm pretty involved, right? I can be biased also. I can absolutely be biased. But it is very important that you question anything that has been said, including what we said, and including what you go through personally. Make your own mind on it. Don't take things for granted. Don't think that someone is teaching you something is necessarily right. That's valid for everyone, for us as well, and for the school. And if you think it's not worth it, make something or do something that makes you get the best out of that experience. Okay? In illustration, especially using this kind of approach, I think they just follow the hype, like schools, especially large schools, they do feel the same pressure as organization, companies, like more, on the market companies that do actual products, because it looks like if now you don't teach how to use that into the pipeline, you may be behind compared to the industry, and your school or teaching curriculum is not valid anymore. I personally think you have to actually go in the opposite direction to that. Study traditional, do paint, get your hands dirty, even with Photoshop or any other tool, because think of this, that's the way I think of myself. If I don't have the tool and I cannot draw, I can still say what's valid visually or what it's not valid, because I have developed the culture and I know what looks good, because it's literally my job. So if the tool that you're using allow you to be autonomous in your skill set and not dependent, I can still draw without Photoshop. I can still paint without Photoshop. I need paper and pencils. Hopefully they still exist. If you feel like you're losing that autonomy, remember that you're giving it away to something else, either the company, the world, the system. Don't do it, because that's your value. Your critical thinking, your way of being autonomous in thinking, that's the value you have. So that's the question I would ask myself if I was, a student, and if I ask myself every day in general as well, if I want to adopt something or not as a tool. So we went in every direction. I don't know if we said too much or it was too fast, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's a complex topic and we're out of time, I think, right? Also.
I think we have what seems to be the last question from Mara.
Sure.
How to deal with AI burnout? Working in a company that only uses AI, it's been a while since I did my own job. Wow. That's a bit soul crushing, actually. I would say don't like my personal advice in a situation like this would be not to fall for the trap and actually try to use, like, even though you might be tired and you might feel a bit demotivated, go home after work, try to work on personal projects, improve and work on your portfolio, and try to look around, because you don't necessarily have to keep working there.
Yeah, these are challenging times, guys, and it's a good thing, because something that you gave for granted, that we all gave for granted, is not granted, which means that we have to think our way out of it. It's part of the job. So don't, I know it's hard. I know, like you were saying, you have to work for a company that uses it. Plan. Don't use too many emotions to deal with this stuff, but plan. Plan how to move away from that. Keep the job, keep the resources you have, but at the same time plan for something different. In any space that is creative, don't just block yourself with one idea.
Okay. I think that was it.